the stream has really started. I will turn down the desktop volume though, because that was rather loud. Let me bring my mic closer to myself. There we go. Hope everyone's having a good day. I'm actually really glad I'm streaming now, because well, if you follow my YouTube, you'll probably see the video soon enough, but I just recorded a vlog for the first time in months. And I told the story about how my job just kind of screwed me over, and changed my schedule without really giving me warning. They're like, hey, you know how you've been working graveyard for months on end? Here you go, here's a day shift. How do you like them apples? And I'm like, okay, well, fine. So that happened, and now I work days. As annoying as it is, I'm not really complaining very much because I missed working days. I do enjoy being out when it's brighter outside, and it feels like I'm a normal human again. Well, normal is putting it loosely, let's be honest here. But yeah, that's what's happened, and I just woke up with very little energy, and I don't know. I felt like I just wasn't ready for the day, so I just struggled through it. I'm on my second cup of coffee for the day, which I only have 2 of, and I don't know. The moment I recorded that vlog, which I will upload once my computer stops being stupid, once I recorded it, I felt energetic. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I have the energy to stream. And yeah, interesting change of schedule. It is, isn't it? There are more details to it, of course. I won't divulge quite into that because, you know, this is a stream. We're not supposed to talk about work here. But yeah, they basically just screwed me over because I work overnights, and then they're like, okay, you know what? Let's do this thing where we don't warn you. We don't give you any notice. You just have to jump right on into this new schedule. So that happened, and it's very difficult to go back to sleeping at night when you're so used to sleeping during the day, so I got like no sleep last night. Even though I was ridiculously tired because I had stayed up an entire 24 hours and then some, so I could get back to sleeping a normal schedule. Because they told me right at the end of my last graveyard shift that, hey, you're gonna be working days starting the day after tomorrow. Or technically tomorrow, but you know what I mean. It's all confusing. It was rather unfortunate. But you know what, actually, since we've started the stream, I'll go ahead and switch to this. This is my faux podcast album. And hang on, is chat up? Let me make sure we've got chat showing up. Oh, it is, but it's on a lower priority, so let's go ahead and move that up. There we go. Oh yeah, it was definitely difficult to adjust to out of the blue. And like I said, I was worried I wouldn't be able to stream today just because I was not feeling it, but once I recorded the vlog and just started letting my brain move and everything, I was like, okay, I feel confident enough to do this. I don't quite know what today's episode holds in store, but I'm just enjoying talking in general. It's been a while since I just had a casual podcast stream, you'd call this. I'm not sure what you'd call it, but I guess I just want to work on commentating more frequently and leaving less dead air because it's more fun that way, you know? Corey, you can't see it, but I am giving you the look of disappointment right now. Nah, it's fine. It's this thing I've been doing with our buddy Joe, or Weird Lemur, as he's addressed as on Twitch and YouTube. It's this thing I've been doing with him since we met. Whenever he tells a bad joke, I give him what we call the slow turn of disappointment, where you can probably imagine the face, because it's the face that anyone would give after hearing a joke like that. And normally, when I give that face to someone, that means I approve of the joke. So, props to you, even though it's still terrible, but I approve. Because we approve of terrible jokes in this household. That's how we live our lives. I mean, we're freaking Earthbound fans here, man. It's like, you gotta like the bad jokes. And don't mind me, I'm just sitting here enjoying my coffee. I got this really cool Critical Role coffee mug, and I love it so much. I could put my webcam on, but I really don't feel like it because I am a mess right now. But it's this cool coffee mug where it's got like a bunch of D20s, and on the D20s are like the different pride flags, and it's awesome. And then at the bottom of the mug's interior, it says, "Don't forget to love each other," and it's super nice. Bad jokes, along with one who's divulged a little too much in Google Translate. Oh boy. If anyone else is watching, check out the Great Pikmin's channel. He's been playing some interesting Google translated games, like Mother 3 and a couple of the Metroid games, and they're definitely interesting. And right, I love it. They have a t-shirt with the same design on it, and I want to get it, but clothing is so expensive, and I'm broke boy. So, coffee mug's good. I mean, the coffee mug was still expensive, but it was worth it. I mean, it wasn't expensive. Whoops. It wasn't expensive, quote-unquote. It was like $14. I just say expensive because it's pricey for a coffee mug, but... what do I know? Last coffee mug I bought was at the freaking dollar store, so... maybe that is the going price for coffee mugs. I don't know how to feel about my coffee lately. The first 2 cups I've made in this cup don't taste quite right, but that's also because it's more different than a lot of the cups I've had recently. It's a bit of a shorter coffee cup, but it's wide. So it's an odd struggle because when I'm trying to pour, I make my coffee a very specific way. And I've gotten very used to the 2 coffee cups I've been using for the past 2 years now. One of them is like a rather tall glass, one of them's kind of shorter, so I've gotten used to how much, half and half in sugar I put into each cup. But this one, it's going to take some adjusting to figure out what the right amount is of each ingredient to make a good coffee cup. And dollar store, everything's $1, even if you've seen a different price in another store, always $1. Absolutely. I haven't been there in years, man. It's been so long. But then again, it's been years since I've been anywhere other than work and home, basically. Man, I really need to go to the beach. It's been way too long since I saw the ocean. I really need my ocean fill, man. It's been way too long. I listen to ocean sounds pretty much every night when I go to sleep. It's really nice. Not the same as actually being there in public, or in person. I never go in the ocean because I just don't like being in water unless it's like a shower or something, but I just enjoy listening to it and watching it and all that. It's very peaceful, and I don't know, I'm a West Coast baby. It's like, I'm used to it, and that's pretty much my life right there. So I think this is the longest I've been without going to the coast. The last time I went to the coast was... man, I don't even remember. I can remember the last time I went to the coast. I just can't remember exactly when it was. Because I remember I went with my mom and her older sister, and we all just hung out. And that was cool. But I can't remember when it was. The last couple years have been very blurred in my mind lately, and it's been getting very easy to forget stuff. But then again, that could also just be me getting old. You never know. My memory's going to crap anyway, so... it's probably just a normal aging thing, honestly. Also, I am loving all the Final Fantasy IX music because I was playing Final Fantasy IX this morning, and I really enjoyed it. I'm finally getting to parts of the game that I haven't seen since I was 14 years old, and that makes me very happy. I don't know if I'll play it on stream, because I have my PS4 plugged in, but still, it's a great game, and if you're an RPG fan, I would highly recommend it. It's been way too easy for me to forget things, and I'm not even 80 yet. I feel that, my dude. I don't even remember how old I am sometimes. I actually forgot my age a few months ago. I'm sure I've told this story multiple times. Again, testifying to the fact that I have a terrible memory now. But there was this one time where I was just... I don't know, I was in a car, and we were pulling up to our house, and I was just thinking, and I don't remember who I was in the car with, but I just turned to them and I asked, am I 22 or am I 23? And I just legitimately could not remember. I know now that I am indeed 23, but still. Hey, that's freaking Aaron Hansen's lucky number from the Dead or Alive playthrough. 23! 23! Oh, gotta love references to other people. Though when you think about it, everything's a reference to everything. Something has spawned from something else. Every single joke, every single story, all of it is derivative. It comes from something. Like whether that's life experiences, someone else's story, etc. It all comes from something, which I think a lot of people forget about. I know I've talked to a lot of aspiring authors who have trouble writing their first story because they worry that once they write it, they're afraid that... Oh. Internet just freaked out on me for a moment. I hope that wasn't weird for you guys too. If it was, not really any helping it now, because it already passed. But a lot of aspiring authors I meet end up running into this issue where they feel like they can't really write their first story because it doesn't feel original enough. They feel like they're not really contributing much when it comes in the way of storytelling, because they feel like their story is like a ripoff of so-and-so's story, or like this game or this movie. But if you're an author and you're letting that get in the way, you're never gonna finish a book. You just gotta write it regardless of what you feel. As long as you're enjoying the book itself, just put it out there, man. It's like, art has to be put out. You can't just let it sit on the back burner. You're an artist for a reason. Friggin' go for it. Like, that can be applied to every other form of art. It's just, the world needs your work, man. Just go for it. Like, you need your art too. You chose to be an author or an artist or a singer or what have you for a reason. I know for me, I don't know if I've ever told this story on stream, but the thing that made me... Hang on, let me take a sip of coffee before I tell the story, because I like my coffee. So, the thing that made me become an author is kind of an interesting thing. When I was about 5 or 6 years old, I was absolutely in love with video games already. I just found them so fascinating. The fact that you can see something on screen and control it with just a few buttons on a controller just blew my mind as a kid, and I loved it. Like, freaking Super Mario Bros. 3 and the original Legend of Zelda were my jam as a kid. I loved those. So, when I was a kid, and I kind of learned about my video game addiction, my parents decided to restrict our video game time. And they were a little more lenient with it when I was a younger kid. But once I got older and had homework to worry about and more responsibilities, they got more strict with the homework time, or with the video game time. So what happened was that I would play a game, and I would draw inspiration from that, and what would happen is that when I wasn't allowed to play video games, I would sit down and I would draw comic books based after the video games I played. So in my mind, I was still playing the game, and I was still having the game visually in front of me in the form of a comic book. Eventually, that transposed into original stories. So I thought, like, I was doing like a Zelda comic, and I was thinking, man, I could do something like this with my own characters. And so my first ever comic book, or my first ever original comic book, was like this freaking self-insert ass story based on the comic book series Bone. I'm sure at least someone's heard of that. It's a very popular comic book from like the late 90s, early 2000s. It's really good. I haven't read it in years, but the story of that series has stuck in my brain for freaking decades. It's that good. But I got inspired by the concept of these regular kids just winding up in the middle of nowhere, and then next thing you know, they're whisked off to some mysterious fantasy land and get caught up in the wars and affairs of this world. Kind of like the beginning of the Bone comics. And that's what my first comic books were all about, and I made like tons of them. I would draw those for hours. I think I'd spend more time working on those than even playing video games. And that's what I did for a little while, until I discovered the medium of writing books, which I don't know if you'd say it requires more steps or less. It's rather complicated, so let's just kind of break this down. Since I am kind of doing a podcast, you know what, let's just go on this full tangent. And I'll keep my main topic in mind so I don't lose it, I promise. So, with a comic book, depending on whether or not you're part of a team or you're just your own independent artist, the comic book involves coming up with a story, the character designs, and drawing those in each panel, and writing all the dialogue and assuring that you have this one cohesive plot, and you're telling it through images and words. But then when it comes to writing a novel, there's no drawing involved. So it's mostly just writing, but you do have more things to describe. So, in terms of whether one has more steps than the other, I feel like that's impossible to judge, to be honest, because you can't really tell. It's just a matter of which you prefer doing or what you feel more comfortable doing. Some people feel more comfortable with the writing element, some people feel more comfortable with the drawing element. And when I was a kid, I used to collaborate with friends and even with my little brother, and we would split the tasks up. So we'd come up with a base story, and for every panel, one person would draw the characters, and the other person would draw like the dialogue boxes. And that's how we do things. So, in the end, I guess there's no real way to measure which one takes more steps. So, time to get back on topic. I just had to go on that tangent to sort of determine things. But I eventually started writing books instead, and I very clearly remember the first game that made me want to write a high fantasy novel was The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, specifically the Game Boy Advance remake for it. Because a friend of mine back in the day gave me his copy, and he's like, "Hey dude, you like Zelda? Try this game, it's freaking awesome." And I'm like, "Oh sweet, a new game." Because as a kid, it was very rare for us to get new games, because, you know, we weren't the richest family around, we're very much a working class family. So, like, any money we got usually went to bills or food and, like, just making sure that my brother and I were taken care of. So, like, video games were very much a luxury that would come very, very sparingly. And so when friends of mine just gave me games for free, I'm like, dude, hell yeah, I'll take that game. And so that's how I got my copy of Link to the Past. I have no idea where it is now, but that game did essentially change my life in a way, because when I played that game, and I saw the narrative elements of the story, like, it was a far cry from the original Legend of Zelda, where the only story you get is that scrolling intro detailing what's going on in the game, and then that's it. You're just thrown in the middle of the world, which I have no issues with, by the way. I love the original Zelda and the exploration elements, but I think A Link to the Past was my first exposure to a game where there was dialogue, and there was more than your single objective. Like in the original Legend of Zelda, your only objective was to collect the 8 Triforce fragments, defeat Ganon, and save Princess Zelda. A Link to the Past... It's dangerous to go alone, Link, take this. Oh, well, that song's gonna be stuck in my head now. But then in A Link to the Past, it took a different turn. So, it starts off with a very dramatic story, by the way. I don't even know how they made that jump, because Link to the Past is only the third game in the Zelda series. So you have Zelda 1 and Zelda 2. Both of them are pretty bare bones stories. Zelda 1, far more about exploration. Zelda 2 does have more RPG elements, and you have to talk to NPCs and the like. But other than that, it doesn't deviate much from the original formula. You still have to go collect the 8 whatevers, and then you have to fight a villain, and then you save Princess Zelda. So, it is more or less the same idea as the original Zelda, just executed in a different way, and they included more townspeople, so the world didn't feel as empty as it was in the original game. And I have a theory about that, but I'll get on it in another topic, or at another time, because I don't want to go on too much of a tangent. But then, Link to the Past took this crazy jump, where all of a sudden, you don't even know who Zelda is, and Hyrule is a completely different world. Suddenly you're in this a very densely populated world, where there's an actual castle, and Princess Zelda actually rules over the Kingdom of Hyrule. And you're just some kid who wakes up and suddenly hears this dream about Princess Zelda, and you're told to go save her without any other means of really doing so. And then Link's uncle, I believe, is who that man is in the house, says he has some business to take care of, so he takes the sword and shield and leaves the house. And once he's out, you act like the rebellious kid you are and leave house. And you go around talking to the Hylian guards, and they all kind of give you the general tutorial crap, and they kind of block your way from going to the other areas. And just right off the bat, A Link to the Past feels completely different from the first two games. You've got rain going on, you've got thunder, you've got this dramatic string music in the background. It's so good. And you're just wandering around, and all of a sudden, things get super real when you go ahead and sneak into the castle and you find your uncle's dead. And he goes ahead and gives you his sword and shield. And yes, sorry, Link to the Past spoilers, but I mean, this is within the first, few minutes of the game, so just chill if that's too big a deal. With that, you go ahead and take the sword, and then the next room you go into, the exact Hylian guards you had been talking to are suddenly hostile and trying to attack you, and it's like, wait, what's going on here? And so you go through the castle and just kind of following Princess Zelda's voice in a way as she's speaking to you telepathically. And you've watched the TRGLP, so you're fine. Okay, good. Man, it's such a good game. So it's just all this craziness is happening. And you go through the castle with one of my favorite songs in the Zelda series, hands down. The Hyrule Castle theme in that game is just top tier video game music. It is some good shit. So you go through the Hyrule Castle and you're fighting all these guards, and it's just, you don't know what's going on. Why is it that these guards who are friendly with you, why are they suddenly attacking you? It doesn't make sense at first, and you, as a player, can feel Link's confusion as you're going through the castle, and just not knowing what's going on. Like, your uncle died in the sewers, you're using his weapons to kill guards you thought were on your side, all while trying to rescue the princess who's somehow speaking to you with the power of telepathy. And then you eventually go down into the castle dungeons and you save her by fighting one of the mace guards, who is probably the easiest boss in the game. Although I had a lot of trouble with him as a kid because I was terrible at Zelda games as a child. But you save Zelda, and let me just say, the fact that you save Zelda in the game's prologue goes to show how different A Link to the Past is from the first two games. You save the princess at the beginning of the game. It's like, okay, I saved the princess, that was the objective of the first two games, what do we do now? It's like, there's so much more to that game. They have so much meat to the story. You've got all sorts of townspeople, people who actually have story relevance, people who don't, but are still entertaining characters, like the two brothers in those houses south of Kakariko Village that are arguing, and that one brother kind of sealed the door to the other brother's room, and you have to blow it up, and then when you do, he's like, okay, maybe I should make up with my brother. And it's like, it has no story relevance, but there's so much personality in the game. It's genius. It's a huge leap from the first 2 Zelda games. So the whole point of this tangent is that the first time I played A Link to the Past, this was probably about 3 years after I played the original Legend of Zelda for the first time. So when I played the first Link to the Past, the story hit me hard. It was my first exposure to a narrative-driven game, and I loved it. Hang on, I'm just making sure the PS4 doesn't turn off while I'm telling this very long story. I just loved every second of it. The story really stuck out to me. And even though Link didn't talk, you really felt like you were part of the story playing as him. And that was the direction that the series later took. I mean, we have games like freaking Skyward Sword with ridiculously long cutscenes now. It's like, I mean, Breath of the Wild deviated from that, but it still has cutscenes and voice acting, which is really weird for a Zelda game, but it fits. Anyway, the whole point is to say that it was definitely my first experience to a narrative-driven video game, and after that, I sought out to write my own stories, and I wanted to capture the same feeling of magic that A Link to the Past instilled within me. And after that point, I was absolutely in love with the idea of being an author. And since then, that's what I've been. I've been writing books since I was 6 years old. I don't even want to count how many I've published, because then I'll just start thinking about it and I'll get into a trance, and then I'll probably not talk for a little bit, and like I said, I don't want there to be any dead air unless I'm really focused on a game or drinking coffee. Speaking of which, let me take a sip of water, because that was a long rant. Yeah, that's the story of how I became an author. I started with comic books, and then I eventually went on to write novels because of A Link to the Past. That game had that much of an impact on me as a child. And then things changed later on once I got introduced to the Final Fantasy series, and I was like, whoa, dude, video games can really tell stories like this? That's awesome! And then it changed even further when I discovered Persona games, and found out how long those stories could really be, and I just fell in love, man. I fell in love hard. I have loved RPGs for years. The funny thing is, my dad was actually the person to introduce me to RPGs, even though he hated them. So that's some irony for you right there. Because he tried the first Final Fantasy as a kid, and he just could not stand it because, first off, he just didn't like that all the combat was luck-based, and he also thought it was really difficult because the game didn't tell you at all what to do. So, because the first Final Fantasy, in the NES version, it just plops you right in the middle of the field after seeing the prologue, just like the original Zelda. And you don't really know what to do. I think a beginner's mistake for the NES version is that you'd go off wandering without visiting the town first and getting weapons and armor. Because I think in the remakes they make it to where you start with at least clothing and very basic weapons, but in the NES version you start with nothing, so you gotta go buy some crap, because if you don't buy anything, you are not surviving in those fields, my friends. Man. Like I said, I have just fallen in love with RPGs. And oh yeah, so, as for the next topic, I kind of wanted to discuss the theory I have about the original Zelda. It's a very minor theory, and I'm sure it's been confirmed somewhere. Or denied, I don't know. I'm being pretentious and thinking it was confirmed. But here's just kind of what I always thought. So, according to the Zelda timeline, the first 2 Zelda games are 2 of the last games in the timeline, right? So, my theory, because they're part of the Dark timeline or something like that. Isn't it the one where Link died against Ganon and Ganon ended up turning the world into darkness or whatever? So, my theory is that the Hyrule we see in the original Legend of Zelda is like a post-apocalyptic Hyrule. It's one that's been ravaged by decades if not centuries, of just darkness and hostile monsters. And all the people have been forced to burrow and live in caves because there are no more houses for them to live in. They've all just essentially been destroyed. And even some of the monsters are kind of tired of the chaos because they live in caves too, and they're like, hey, this is a secret to everyone, here's 30 bucks. Go buy yourself a nice ring. Can't afford it for most of the game, so haha. But my theory is that after you defeat Ganon in the original Zelda, even though Ganon does end up kind of having the whole Dracula thing from the Castlevania games where he lives on even in death and his followers try bringing him back by killing Link, I think his death did have an impact on the world of Hyrule. The world of Hyrule, or the Kingdom of Hyrule, I suppose I should say, no longer had this Dark Lord ruling over it, so the land wasn't covered by darkness anymore. People were finally able to come out of their caves and repopulate the world with towns, and there's even the castle that Zelda is sleeping in. Well, I don't know if that constitutes as a castle, it's more like a temple, but still. The land of Hyrule in Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link is way more fleshed out than it was in the first game, and I think it's because of your actions in the first game impacted the world, so people were able to actually live on and enjoy regular lives. And I don't know, that's just my theory. A game theory. Let me take a sip of coffee. Man, I haven't thought about the Zelda series like this in a very long time. I forgot how much I really enjoyed it. Man, I need to play a Zelda game again soon. I started a Let's Play for Wind Waker on my channel, thinking I'd keep it consistent, but that didn't happen. It's not really even an issue I had with the game. I recorded it and I got super into it, and I was super into the recording process and getting the audio and the video to matching, because unlike what I do here on streams, when I recorded the voice audio through Audacity. Consistency? What's that, right? Oh, I feel that on a deep level. Man, I have so many unfinished Let's Plays on my channel. Ugh, I need to get back to some of them one day. But I recorded my voice in Audacity, and I recorded the gameplay footage using Elgato's default recording software, because that has a much higher quality than OBS's recording does, essentially. So I just recorded the game footage and meshed the audio together and made it match, which was a method I used to do as a teenager when I was first starting out on YouTube. So yeah, with all that, I did all that with Wind Waker, and I got the audio sounding really good and nice and crisp. I added like a little bass boost to give my voice more projection, because even though I'm a theater and a choir boy, my projection has gone to shit over the past few years because I am no longer in theater nor choir. So I kind of gave myself that nice little needed boost so I can actually get back to sounding a little better. And honestly, that's the whole reason I'm recording this quote-unquote podcast, I suppose we could say. The whole point of it is for me to get used to talking again, to talking frequently, and with energy, so I don't let my projection go to waste. I also need to work on my freaking posture, man. That's another thing that's went down the drain since I left high school. When I was in choir, I actually got rewards for my posture, or awards, not rewards, awards, because there's such a difference. But like, I was known for my insanely good choir posture. I'm just sitting with not fully straight, but like with my shoulders back and down, with my back slightly arched back, and kind of sitting up with my head brought back and my chin kind of brought back as well. No hunches, no craning of the neck, no straining. I had really good posture when I was in high school because of choir, but once I became an adult and was no longer in choir, I stopped practicing being good at posture, and everything went to crap. And so I got into the habits of slumping and just not sitting in healthy postures. But having a good posture allows for proper vocal, I just said the word. What is it? Projection. Oh my god, I can't believe it took me that long to figure that out. Sitting with better posture allows for more air to enter your system, and then therefore you can use more of it. And another thing I need to practice is not talking with my throat so much. That's a problem that damages your vocal cords, and you want to speak from your diaphragm. So when you breathe, you don't want your chest to rise, you want your stomach and your back to kind of expand. And then while you're speaking, you want the air to go ahead and leave. And another trick for singing is to plug your nose, and that way you can actually tell whether or not you're speaking through, I don't know if you'd call it your throat or not, but it's a good way to tell how you're speaking or singing. And if you can plug your nose and sing without sounding all nasally like this, you can tell that you're singing more with your diaphragm and not with your chest or your throat. Freaking singing tips here with that gaming author, because he hasn't sang in, let's see, how long has it been since I sang professionally? Oh, it's only been 2 years, or a little over 2 years, because I keep forgetting I was actually in a musical in 2018 when I wasn't in high school, so that's a thing. I kind of had my singing posture back when I did that musical, but not very much. That musical kind of drained me, and after that I was pretty done with performing life in general, just because the process was so exhausting. And I just couldn't do it after that one anymore. It was really sad too, because it was a very good performance. The whole cast was amazing. A majority of the crew was amazing too. I'm not gonna say anything further than that though, but okay, I will say basically the entire crew was amazing. There was just one person in the entire thing that I wasn't a super big fan of. I won't name names, and I won't specify who, but still. I loved everyone else in the cast and crew. And it was a great group, it was a great performance. The only issue is that it was a very exhausting performance. It was Beauty and the Beast, and the Broadway version specifically, and my god, a lot went into that show. I can't believe any of us survived, to be honest. It was insanity. I am very thankful that we survived it. But still, it was just sheer insanity. And I am really glad that we actually got it done. It was way worth it, because the audience went crazy over it. But at the end of it, I was just so tired. And I thought, man, I do not have the energy I had when I was a teenager. So, since then, YouTube and live streams are about the closest I've gotten to performing. And I have no problem with that. I love doing these. I love streaming. I love doing YouTube videos. I love performing. But for a long time, I forgot that performance is an element in these. When I play video games on stream or on YouTube, I get way too obsessed with the idea of playing the game that I often forget to actually speak. And that's why I have a lot of dead air when I play games, especially like Minecraft or I don't know, I can't think of any other examples. Oh yeah, Judgment. I get way too focused on the games, and I just do not actually focus on the commentary element nearly as much as I really should. And why did my phone turn on? I didn't call Google, did I? No, I did not. Go away, Postmates. We don't even have you on our zip code. But yeah, like I was saying, I love performing on stream and on YouTube, and I really want to get into it more. I want to get back into voice acting one day too, or get back into voice acting like I ever did it. And I haven't really been on a very good path to voice acting because here I am drinking coffee when that's really bad for your vocal cords. I like it though. It's too good to pass up, man. Well, right? Rip my good habits, right? Well, who's to say I ever had good habits in the first place? Oh, I just realized we missed 420. I should have acknowledged it when it was 420. Also, sorry if you heard a scratching. I have a couple of books on my desk, and I was moving one out of the way, and ended up scraping it against the mic's pop filter. Even though I'm not using the pop filter, but I still have it attached anyway, because who cares? Oh yeah, so for another topic, this is a recent realization I came to about video games specifically. I recently realized that if you fear failure in a video game, which is a problem I have suffered with basically since I was a baby, if you fear failure in a video game, you're never really gonna play it. That's why, for years, the only things I've really played are turn-based RPGs, because at least if I'm doing terribly in that, I can blame the RNG or something, and it's not skill-based, so I just depend on numbers and my diligence to grind levels and make sure my characters are always strong enough to face the next boss. So, to me, turn-based RPGs were just really easy to get into, but recently, I came to realize that by having this mindset that I just can't branch out and play other games because I'm afraid to lose, I am really alienating myself from a lot of really good video games. Excuse me. Yeah, it's just that mindset is stopping me from branching out and playing all these other great... Oh, excuse me. Whoa. Stuff's going on in my chest, so it's like stopping me. Yeah, after that realization, I started branching out and playing more games. Recently, I finally got back into Spider-Man on the PS4, and I have thoroughly been enjoying that game. I haven't played much of it since I last played. Like, I played it for 2 days, non-stop, and was obsessed, and then I just stopped all of a sudden. I think it's because I wanted to prioritize other games. But after realizing that if you just have this fear of failure, you're never really going to get past any of the games you have, I did something rather daring, and I re-downloaded Dark Souls, boy. The one game I never thought I'd be able to play, because not only is it known for being a hard game, it's also technically a horror game, which I am terrible with. The closest to horror games I can really handle are Danganronpa and the original Persona. That's about it. Well, I decided to re-download Dark Souls. At first I thought I'd have to buy it again, and if I did, I just would ignore it. So, side note about that, because apparently this podcast is all about side notes. There was a little thing that happened to my PlayStation Network account. I had one account linked to both my PS3 and PS4, and it was all hunky-dory for a long time. But all of a sudden, I don't remember what I went to play, but I went to play something on my PS3 that required being connected to the network, and it required you to sign in to your PlayStation Network account. And so I went ahead and entered my email and password, and for some reason it said, oh, you need two-step verification to log in. And I'm like, wait, what? I don't remember ever activating that. So I went to log in on the PlayStation Network site, and it was like, you need two-step verification to sign in, but in order to enable two-step verification, you have to sign in first. So I was caught in this endless loop, and I couldn't get into my PSN account. I even contacted the support line, and they weren't able to help me because they required information from my account that I had to get by logging in. And I wasn't mad at them. because I work customer support. I totally understand if they can't do something because they need something. Like, I was totally understanding because, like, to me, there's no point in getting mad at customer service. At the end of the day, they're just doing their jobs. Like, don't even worry about it, man. But after realizing that even support couldn't help me, I'm like, well, what do I do now? So I just made another PSN account, and that's the one I've been using since. So the reason I went on this tangent is it goes back to me checking Dark Souls on the PlayStation Network store. I was worried that I would have to repurchase it because I bought it on my previous account. Or at least I thought I did. I might have the logistics wrong, and if anyone who knows the logistics behind how this works, definitely feel free to correct me either in chat or in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. But I ended up checking it, and next thing I know, instead of saying, hey, buy now, you can purchase it. And I'm like, or instead of buy now, you can download it. I'm like, oh, hell yeah, dude. So I just downloaded it, and it downloaded real fast because, you know, by today's standards, it's not as big as, like, some of the newer games. A file, in terms of file size, at least. And, so after it finished downloading, I decided to go ahead and give the tutorial the good old college try or whatever. And like pretty much any noob, because I am very much a noob, I was terrible. I did better at fighting the very basic enemies in the beginning, and it took me a second to realize I got to that one room where the Asylum Dragon, I think it's called, falls down and starts chasing after you, and you have to go ahead and leave the room because you're not ready to kill it yet. And so after that, I started getting used to the gameplay. I got into a flow, and one big problem of mine when I initially played the game, I'm gonna turn down the audio because I might get copyright stricken for this. I'm actually gonna turn the volume down directly from YouTube, because that's probably why it's so damn loud. Alright, and then I can turn it up from OBS now. Okay, there we go. So, one reason why I struggled so much with the Dark Souls in the first place is because of my fear of failure. And I didn't want to progress through the game because I knew it would get harder. And I was terrified of that. Like, my biggest thing in video games is that I always hated dying in video games as a kid. I don't even know why. Like, I was terrified of the phantoms in Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks because it has one of my biggest gripes in video games, or it's the biggest thing I hate about horror games, where it gives you this enemy that can kill you, but you have no means to fight back against it. And I hate that. And with phantoms in those DS Zelda games, you don't get the means to fight them till, like, very much the end game. And I never got far enough because I was terrified of phantoms, and also, the Temple of the Ocean King in Phantom Hourglass is total bullshit. Let me take a sip of water because my throat's getting worn out. I'm getting so old. The coffee is not helping. Alright, there we go. That should help for a little bit. So, I set my fear of failure aside, and I was like, you know what, if I die, I die. This is freaking Dark Souls. You die all the time. So, I pressed on without that fear of failure, and all of a sudden, the game was way more fun. Because I was just going forward, and I was charging at enemies, using the attacks, and, like, even though I sucked a lot of the time, and there was this one specific enemy I kept making the same mistake on all the time, because there's this one enemy, like, on the hallway leading towards the last hallway before you fight the boss, and every single time I would forget to target it, so when I went to back up, instead of backing up, I'd turn around, leaving my back vulnerable to the enemy's attack, and he'd hit me every time because I kept making that mistake. But, like, I fully acknowledge that that was my bad. Like, Dark Souls is very much a game where none of the deaths are bullshit. If you die, it's because of something you as the player did, which I fully acknowledge. But I had so much more fun with the game once I just realized that death is a natural part of the game. It's just something you deal with. So I finally pressed on through the tutorial, and then I think, yeah, I got further than I did the first time I played, because the first time I played, I was just too afraid of dying, and I was like, no, I can't do this, man, I can't do this, and I just stopped playing, and I think I even deleted the game to make room for another game, but that was back before I had an external hard drive. Beside the point. Anyway, I finally get to the boss, and it gives you the whole tutorial of, oh hey, when you're falling, go ahead and attack. And I was like, okay, I'll do so. And so I get into the room, and I'm just standing there looking at him, and the dragon is like looking up at me, and I was like, okay, is he not gonna move until I do? But then all of a sudden he jumps up, and then I go into panic mode, and I'm like, alright, we're doing this. I go ahead and jump off the ledge and attack, and then I see it deals like almost half his HP, and I'm like, holy shit, that jump attack is OP as hell. And then I went and fought him, but I died, like, I think I died a total of 4 times before I got him, which was way fewer times than I expected to, honestly. Like, and one of those, I think the 4th time, I didn't get the jump on him, so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna take the L on this one, because it's like, I think for that fight, you basically have to get the jump on him, because when he's first introduced, you're told to run the hell away from him. Granted, at that point, you have a broken sword, and when you go to actually fight him, you have like an actual, I think you have a great sword, or a broadsword, I think it was. So you have a weapon more suitable for fighting, and you don't have this broken-ass sword that has like no blade. Anyway, on the 5th try, because, like, I didn't even intend to win, honestly. I was just like I was talking to my girlfriend about it, and I was like, man, yeah, this game is as hard as everyone says. And it's like, all those jokes about never making it past the tutorial, I can see why. Because that boss fight is still the tutorial. So, I went to show her what it was like, and next thing I know, I'm suddenly, like, I'm getting the hang of the dodge timing, because my biggest problem is that at first I was dodging too early. And another issue of mine was that I was using a lot of my stamina way too soon, and I kept forgetting that the dash button was a thing, which is very damn important in that game, because that dragon has an insane reach, and you really want to get away, because you can't super depend on dodging, unless you can get into a good position to, like, dodge around him, and then start attacking him from behind, like I did. Words cannot express how ridiculously stoned I am. Oh boy, I love that. And welcome to this, I guess, podcast stream. I'm just talking shit right now until I'm, like, content with this as a recording, and then I'll be playing a game after. But yeah, I'm just talking about Dark Souls because I'm actually liking that game. I don't think I'll play it on stream because I couldn't handle the embarrassment, but I'm really enjoying it. And I was very happy when I actually beat the boss. Honestly, my girlfriend was watching his HP bar more than I was. Basically, I was just way more focused on surviving. So she told me, oh, you have only like 1 more hit left. And I'm like, okay, whatever, I don't know. So I kept dodging, and then I finally get like a really good hit in. And next thing I know, he stops moving. And I'm like, did I actually win that? Like, unintentionally? Oh, it's so damn good. That game is genius. I can see why it has such a huge following. Wow. I can't even remember what this podcast thing started with, but I am very content with this recording. It's about the length I wanted it to be, so I'll cut off the record. I can co-commentate. I'm about to end the podcast section, but if you'd like to co-commentate during the game part, that would be awesome. I'm actually gonna go to intermission once this is done so I can grab something to eat because my stomach's screaming at me and it's really mad because I haven't eaten. So I'll go ahead and grab some food real quick and then hop into the Discord and we can totally do co-com on a game. But for those watching on YouTube, thanks for watching, and I hope you have your stomach want food, very much so. I hope you guys have a good day, and for those of you on stream, I'll be back momentarily.